But I think that we need to be equipped to the point that we are at least what Peter said. He said, be ready to give an answer. Not get ready, but be ready. All right, it is your friendly favorite neighborhood apologist, Damon Richardson, for another edition of Urban Logia Live. And I am running at least about an hour behind, but I figured, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and jump on anyway, because I do want to come back again on Wednesday and pick up the topic on the Trojan Horse series. But today I'm going to cut in. I'm going to cut in on that series with another discussion that I want you to be involved in. But before we do that, just let us know where you are watching from. Go ahead and drop your location. Let us know what. That sounds crazy in this day and time. Let us know where you are watching from. You don't have to drop your whole location, but nonetheless, let us know where you are watching from. We're grateful for you. And if you have not already done so, definitely subscribe. We want to continue to grow the listening audience. We want to build our supporters and those who are exposed to this ministry. And so let us know again where you are watching from. And there we go. So we've got a DC watching, and my dear friend and brother, Pastor Alexander Wade, my podcast partner. Again, if you have not already done so, make sure you check out Text Talk with Unc and Wade. Subscribe. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow us on Spotify and also Apple Podcast. We are doing something really, really big over there at Text Talk with Unc and Wade. There we go. There we go. I see you. I see you. I see you. My dear sister, Rochelle, TV for you. Thank you so much. Dear sister has been supporting the mission to Zambia so generously, and I really want to shout you out. Thank you so much for that. Greetings from the land of Atlanta via Brooklyn. And we've got LA in the house, Shreveport, Louisiana watching, Tulsa is watching. Yes, new episode dropping tomorrow. You definitely want to check that out. And thank you, Stony Boy 318. Thank you so much. Detroit is watching. Feel so bad for Detroit with their loss. As they say, sorry for your loss. Their loss yesterday, terrible loss as it was on their own home court. I don't want to rub it in. I thought, it didn't matter to me who we were going to play in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I thought Detroit would have wanted it badly enough, I should say, especially considering it was a Game 7 and it was on their home court. And so now the Pistons will be eating conies. And like I said, you know what? In reality, Coney Island is a New York thing. So nevertheless, Duluth, Georgia is watching. H-Town is watching. Thank God for all of you who are here. Let's go ahead and get into it. And I want to, sorry about that. I was getting a text message there. Needed to silence that. So listen, let's go ahead and get into it. So I want to talk about, toxic polarization, but not simply toxic polarization. I want to go beyond that conversation. Everybody's having that conversation. It's still a conversation worth having. But I want to go deeper. I want to talk about what really causes toxic polarization. And most of the time when we're having this conversation, people are talking about the polarization of the conversation itself, right? And so there are some reasons for toxic polarization, and we can have that part of the conversation. But I really want to use that as a springboard to talk about the more deeper seated issues, like what really causes um, polarization in conversation, as you see across social media. The country is divided, the world is divided, the nation is divided, um, and discourse is constantly, there's this strong polarization, and it's super profitable, right? There are entire algorithms and platforms that are dedicated to really stoking the fires of polarization, because controversy creates a lot of excitement and gets a whole lot of support. And oftentimes you see the channels that do well driving polarization from one side or the other are often the ones that get a significant amount of views and support. And so I want to talk a little bit about toxic polarization, and then go deeper into something that I think lies underneath or at the root of toxic polarization. And I will refer to that as toxic engagement. And I know the word toxic gets thrown around a lot. It's become kind of like a pop psychology kind of terminology. But I want to use it because I think it is useful for our conversation. And so let's talk for a little bit about uh, toxic polarization and some of the reasons for it in terms of why things seem to be so polarized in society. And so one of the things that I do want to point out, let me just pull up some of my notes here. Here we go. All right. So let me just pull up some of my notes here. So one of the reasons for, and let's just give hold on. Let's just give a definition for toxic polarization. I'm just going to find one. Anyway, right. I'll just find one. So here's one right off the internet. No big secret. Toxic polarization is a severe societal divide where opposing groups no longer just disagree on policies, but actively dislike, distrust, and dehumanize one another. It shifts from political disagreements from we have different ideas to they are an existential threat. And there's some key characteristics, but I'm actually going to get into that. And I know what you're thinking. There's some people who are like, well, man, I've read some of your content, some of your threads. Sounds like you are a contributor to toxic polarization. And of course, I've heard you use the term existential threat as well. Is that hypocrisy? Are you doing the very same thing? Is this a case of the pot calling the kettle black? So we're going to get into all of that. As you know, I don't shy away from anything, not even pointing the finger at myself. Keep in mind, I'm the dude that debated myself, right? So I ain't ever afraid to be wrong if I am wrong, right? So, or ever afraid to even admit it. So that is the definition of toxic polarization. Let's get into some of the things that are at the root of it. And already you've heard the word dehumanization. And so one of the reasons for toxic polarization is this dehumanization of the opposing side. So in other words, toxic polarization moves beyond disagreement into viewing the other group as morally inferior, right? So once you start looking at everybody that you disagree with, whether right or wrong, as essentially morally inferior, dangerous, or less than human, that dehumanization allows you to kind of justify a toxicity in your behavior, because you don't really see this other group or these other people particularly as morally equal with you. This is how you hear people oftentimes. They'll come into the conversation and they're throwing around things like libtards or snowflakes and, right wingers and this, that, or the other. Um, the reason that they're using these types of, these what do you call it, demonizations, if you will, or stereotypes, or stigmatizations. I think that's a better terminology, to stigmatize, and you've got to have some sort of name for it, because it allows them that much more to dehumanize uh, the other group, right? So if I can call them something and point out the disgust and the angst that I have with that particular tribe or that particular group, it just allows you to be able to justify the dehumanization process. And so this is the kind of the gateway drug of polarization. Once it sets in, no productive conversation is possible. And you've seen that happen. Once people start getting into the ad hominem as opposed to the ad argumentum, they're no longer dealing with the argument. They are dealing with it's to the person, ad hominem, to the person, right? To the man or to the woman. The goal is now, let me just lead with some sort of insult. And the insult is a significant part of the dehumanization process, right? So, for example, political opponents routinely described not as wrong, but as evil, a threat to civilization, not real Americans and patriots. The person who embodies this the most, I mean, there's just no other way to put it. The person who embodies this type of dehumanization and toxic polarization is Donald Trump. Donald Trump obviously has political rivals. All politicians have rivals, people who are on the other side of their politics, right? And I'm not talking about um, immoral policies. I'm just talking about politics in general. Whether you consider yourself a political conservative or a political progressive, there are good uh, political ideas on both sides of that, right? But what you're hearing now is you're hearing conversation coming, say, for instance, from the right to say, man, the Democratic Party is actually, they're calling the entire party an existential threat. Or they are saying that, man, the Democratic Party is a terrorist organization and needs to be they all need to be imprisoned, right? So once you start dealing with this notion that simply because people disagree with you, and I'm not talking about the fact that there are people who hold to ideologies that are dangerous. So I don't want you to think that that's not true. There are ideologies and theologies that are dangerous, that do pose an existential threat. But we're talking about people who merely disagree. We're not talking about um, facts. We're just talking about disagreement around, for instance, the best approach to something, right? And so once you start seeing anybody that disagrees with your view as dangerous, as repugnant, morally evil, just on the basis of disagreeing with you, or they're not American. So this is kind of the way that Donald Trump talks. So anybody that disagrees with him, suddenly they're the worst human being ever. They're a horrible person. So he goes to these extremes in terms of the way that he characterizes them, and that allows for this kind of nastiness that you hear not only come from him, but also supporters of this, the MAGA type movement, is that they have successfully allowed themselves to dehumanize anybody that disagrees with them, which again justifies the way that they treat um, those who disagree with them. And so the other thing, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I see Detroit and the UK, Wilmington, Delaware is also watching as well. We're very, very grateful. Thank you for becoming a member. We appreciate you. So another reason for, I would say, toxic polarization is what you would call a tribal epistemology. So in other words, you see your group as essentially defining what truth is. So when people stop asking, is this true? And they start asking, did my team say this? Then facts become weapons rather than shared ground. So in other words, a person that's holding to tribal epistemology is not a person that really cares about facts. They only really want to know, is this a talking point that aligns with my tribe? And so when they are, one of the reasons that this contributes to toxic polarization is because, for instance, this person knows that they are going to be in various conversations, whether throughout the day or in various conversations throughout the week. This type of person typically will Google, or even now utilize AI, Chat GPT, for instance, and ask for talking points that essentially align with their particular tribe. They want to parrot those talking points. They want to make sure that they are remaining faithful to the tribe's way of discussing these issues, right? And so even if they enter into conversation with a person that is showing that your view is incorrect, your view doesn't align with the facts. Look, here's what history says. Look, here's what the Bible actually says and means on this particular issue. They don't really care, because for them, it's not about what's true. It's whether or not this actually aligns with what my tribe believes, right? So this is what you would call tribal epistemology. So each side lives in a separate information type ecosystem that reinforces only its own world view. Now, here's how the algorithm will work to kind of help that as well, right? So after you start looking at videos that correspond with this particular tribal epistemology and this particular kind of um, information ecosystem that supports what you believe, right? What you hold to. The algorithm will essentially feed you more of that, right? So what that does is it causes you to think that everybody, like, this is the dominant worldview. This is the right way of seeing it, and therefore everybody else who sees it differently is necessarily wrong. And so the algorithm is not really a healthy or an accurate picture of where everybody is on everything. What the algorithm does is it just sends you more of what you think and how you see things, right? And it does that to constantly keep you enraged. It does that in order to feed what it is that you are interested in. Now, algorithms are profitable, so you've got obviously sponsors and ad revenue and this, that, and the other. They don't really care. They're just trying to keep you engaged. But the socio-psychological effect of that is that it continues to reinforce these ideas that the way that you see things and the way that your group sees things is correct. And anything that challenges that must of necessity be wrong for the mere fact that it goes against your tribal epistemology, right? And so, an example of that would be like the same economic statistic praised when one administration reports it is dismissed as manipulation when another one does, right? So for instance, let's just, again, dealing with kind of political type issues. A few years ago, gas prices were up, and inflation obviously was up, and the country was, regardless of whether you were a Democrat, a Republican, independent, or nothing at all, nobody was particularly happy about the direction the country was going in, right? And there were questions swirling around about President Joe Biden's, mental state of mind, his mental capacity. And of course, you had a very salty Donald Trump constantly tweeting Sleepy Joe and Joe is crazy and all of these other kind of things, right? And obviously, things were getting bad. Now, what they were saying on the other side is, oh, nothing to worry about. He's in a fine mental state of health. And then, of course, we find later that, well, he really wasn't. His mental state of health was declining. And at that point there, he announced that he would not be running for another term. And he essentially gave his full endorsement, and essentially the Democratic Party gave their full endorsement to Vice President Kamala Harris for president, right? So I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. Now, to show you how this works now, so gas prices are significantly higher than it was then. Food prices is significantly higher than it was then. Most Americans have less savings and less money take home after taxes, expenses, and all of that now than then, because of a multi-billion-dollar war that is completely unnecessary, a number of other bad policies, right? And on top of that, an obvious mental slide in the psychological fitness of the president. In fact, it is by far significantly worse than the mental crash and slide of President Joe Biden's. Like, this guy spazzes in the middle of the night and will literally tweet out or even put on his Trump social media, Truth Social, sometimes 50 posts, somewhere between 3 and 5 in the morning, and has been seen, ironically, while he was talking about Sleepy Joe, has been seen literally dozing off in the middle of not only meetings, but press conferences. Now, what am I saying? Why am I bringing all of this up? So that when you now look at the tribal epistemology of MAGA, suddenly, rising costs are not a problem. Gas prices higher, not a problem. These things are necessary in order for the president to fix the way that things were from the previous administration. We just gotta literally buckle in and get behind this president. He's going to make it all better. Meanwhile, what is he saying? I really don't care that Americans are struggling day to day. We've got to deal with Iran. Really don't care about prices at the gas pump. These are things that he's literally saying. And so where's the tribal epistemology in all of this? Well, again, here's what they said then. Now, when it is the same thing coming from their side, we've got to stick with the talking points. We've got to stick with the epistemology. We've got to stick with the group think. We've got to stick with what does our tribe believe? And so even when it can be shown that this is hypocrisy, that this is a double standard, that this is obviously ignoring the facts, justifying and making excuses, well, what do people do who hold to tribal epistemology? They ignore all of that. Truth doesn't actually matter to them. Only being faithful to the group's idea, the group's the group's worldview, right? So another thing that contributes to, I would say, another characteristic and cause of toxic polarization is what I would call asymmetrical outrage. So here's how I would define that. So it's, well, our bad, their catastrophe. So in toxic polarization, it creates a double standard, very similar to what we were just talking about when we were dealing with the tribal epistemology. Here, the double standard where the same behavior is excused in your group and condemned as disqualifying in the other. So principles become situational rather than consistent, right? So in one example of that, heated rhetoric from one politician is passion, and that identical language from the opposition is incitement. See how that works? This kind of double standard, this asymmetrical type outrage. We often see it when, for instance, I see it all the time, especially with white racists, right? So white racists love to get on social media, especially if it's a news story where a crime is being reported on. Here's how that works, right? And so the crime is being reported on, and let's say it is a black person. Like, black people be spazzing out too, right? We just, the month of April and even leading into May, we've seen a number of black women, some of Caribbean and African descent, African American women who were killed as a result of domestic violence, right? And it happens with just about every group, right? Or let's just say, for instance, an African American shoots into a crowd, there's some drive-by, 2 people are killed. Go into the comment section, and it's literally littered with white folk saying usual suspects, or what else can you expect from the circus or the monkeys? Like the type of cowards that love to they can throw their racism out there because you don't really know who they are. Oftentimes they don't have a picture, they don't have a real traceable account, but they love social media because it allows them to be able to hide behind their racist sentiment. So that's one of their favorite things to say, the usual suspects, right? And so then take that same crime, same exact crime. White person goes and shoots into a crowd, kills a couple of people, and you don't see any of the usual suspect type comments or the circus or monkeys or none of that in the comments. What you hear is just general outrage. Oh, he ought to be locked up. Or man, he had a mental health type issue, right? So this type of asymmetrical outrage, essentially, it's asymmetrical because it's the worst possible thing that could happen when it comes from the opposition. But then when it's coming from your group or from people that you have some sort of sentimentality for, then you excuse it. You lighten it up. It's not as bad, right? Again, it's just, oh man, it's mental health, right? And the issue is not tied to their ethnicity or race. It's simply tied to the person. The person is bad. The person right? If they do any kind of condemning, this person needs to be, and sometimes you'll hear them, they'll be like, this person needs to be hung upside down from their toes. And you thinking, okay, these people being a little bit fair, but they're really not, because they're really just condemning the person and the behavior, but they are not connecting the behavior to some pathology that is supposed to be inherent within their race. This person doesn't become the avatar, if you will. Uh-oh, I almost forgot to plug in. Hold on just a second. Almost lost the feed. This person doesn't become the avatar for white people. It's just a bad person. It's not even important to these people that they are white. It's just this person done wrong. And oftentimes they will even make excuses, right? So where it's over here, it's, oh yeah, more black on black crime. You never hear anybody say white on white crime. And here's the facts, y'all. And this is one of the reasons that you know it's racially motivated. The fact of the matter is that every group, ethnic, cultural wise, or whatever, commits the majority of their crimes among people of their same group. That's a fact, right? And so the reality is that all crime is predominantly this on that, right? Most Asians commit crimes against other Asians, but you never hear Asian on Asian crime. It's just singled out when it comes to Black people, right? So this asymmetrical kind of outrage. Sometimes you even hear it in sports, right? A white quarterback can spaz on the field and throw his helmet down and walk off. And commentators will literally break their necks to say, oh man, this is the passion in him. This is the passion in this. He's a winner. This is why he's acting like that. And you all seen it. I don't get on here talking about I'm imagining this stuff, because you crazy if you think I'm making this up. We have all seen this, right? And so here's how that works. Black quarterback gets angry, walks up out of the walks away from the interview, slams his helmet down, doesn't shake the opponent's hand, or something that would be generally poor sport. Not making excuses for it. It's poor sportsmanship. But what do they say? Oh, this is classless, right? See, again, asymmetrical type outrage. It's passion here, but then it's classless when it's your opponent, right? And so when people think in these kind of polarizing ways and they bring these kinds of elements into conversations, the conversation literally has no chance of edification. It's because people engaging in the conversation think like this. What are some other issues here with toxic polarization? Here's another one. Performative conflict over genuine dialogue. Performative conflict over genuine dialogue. Here's what that sounds like. Debates and public discourses shift from seeking understanding to performing for one's own audience. The goal is not to persuade the opponent or find truth. It's simply to score points and signal group loyalty. It's essentially virtue signaling for your team, right? And so oftentimes the reason that polarization is so sharp is that there's some folk who are coming into the conversation for performative purposes only. In other words, I need to rep my team. I need to show them that I can go hard for my particular team. Now, let me say this. Even when it comes down to things like white supremacy and white Christian nationalism and racism, we're not merely just talking about skin color, because what we often see is Black people do oftentimes who align with that type of tribal epistemology, white Christian nationalism, and things like that, we often see that they are more zealous to perform for that team rather than to engage genuinely. They'll go out of their way because they got a point to prove. They want people to think that they are safe, that they are that they want to hear that attaboy. That's it, Damon. You're talking right. Tell them, Damon. And so that encourages them even more. See, we've got to stop all of this skin idolatry. They don't even listen to what's being said because they're so motivated to perform and virtue signal for the people that they're trying to impress, i.e., the folk from their tribe. So they don't even really honestly and genuinely engage with what's being said, because what they're determined to do is take the theme or the topic, spin it, make a straw man out of it, and then start all of the performative virtue signaling in order to demonstrate their loyalty, just so that they can. Sometimes it helps them with their grift. Oftentimes it helps them with their proximity. In other times, it just helps to create some sense of dignity and identity and significance. And so they're finding that with whites who hold to this kind of Christian nationalist type ideology, right? And so the more they perform, then the more they're accepted by the group, right? And we see that. So this doesn't. We're not just talking about whites. When we say whiteness, we're not even merely talking about skin color. We're talking about a social type status, right? An identity around which rightness and Christianity and being American and being wholesome and good is essentially synonymous with political whiteness, right? It creates this standardization of sorts. Everything else is cultural. Everything else is really left of this measurement, right? And so oftentimes people who are non-white from an ethnic standpoint seek to identify with, to perform for this acceptance in whatever it is that they get out of it. Take, for instance, literal clowns like Jason Whitlock, right? Jason Whitlock literally uses his platform to create the worst kinds of talking points that are always designed to demonize Blackness, no matter how ridiculous his take is. Take, for instance, how he just recently used his platform to essentially make justifications and to throw praise and admiration at Chud the Builder, a white supremacist, a racist that literally stood in Nashville downtown, essentially antagonizing Black people, daring Black by calling them the N-word and throwing out other racial epithets, racist epithets, and all kinds of things, daring Black people to respond, and even saying that he's hoping that they do, so that he would have reason to shoot them, reason to, as he thinks, to stand his ground, right? And so then he talks about, he would talk about Black people as chimping out, right? Attempting, well, not attempting, but essentially associating Black people with animals and having animal instincts like a chimp, just reacting emotionally, not rationally, because in his mind, we are lower creatures, right? And so just recently, he got into a situation where he ended up shooting himself in an attempt to shoot a Black man, and was arrested and is being charged for attempted murder. Well, here's the most, if you ever seen Django, that character Steven, Jason Whitlock is worse than Stephen. Jason Whitlock is worse than Stephen. Jason Whitlock is the type of dude that if he found out if you were enslaved and you were planning on running, Jason Whitlock is that dude that would have told, because in his mind, you are betraying the slave master. In his mind, you are wrong. In his mind, you are out of the will of God. Right? And so this is Jason Whitlock. So he takes to his platform in order to throw praise at Chud the Builder. Chud the Builder's the good guy. He's the hero. Black people are the problem, right? And so why am I saying that? That is because Jason Whitlock is an example of not just Black self-hatred, but the kind of person that does this performative conflict over genuine dialogue. You will never get genuine dialogue out of Jason Whitlock. And it may not be because he's incapable of it. It is because his goal is to perform. It is a grift for him. And he might even believe this stuff. He might be that delusional where he actually believes this stuff. But at this point, it is clear Jason Whitlock does not care what is true. He is never going to enter into genuine dialogue with anybody about issues. He is never going to ever really look at the facts, ever show any kind of contrition or humility. He's never going to walk anything back or say, oh, wow, you know what? I was wrong. Nope. He's going to continue to shuck and jive and step and fetch, right? Huck and buck. Why? Because that's what endears him to the good old white man, right? Who he has created an idol out of. Literally, a teraphim of whiteness lives in his mind. So his whole goal and motivation in life is to perform. It's performance conflict. It is to always be the contrarian wherever the conversation about Blackness exists. That is a fact. What else? Here's another thing, and then we'll get into toxic engagement. That is the actual engagement part, right? And so I'll say the other thing is this. It is the spiral of negative partisanship. And so what that essentially means is that people no longer rally for something. They actually organize against someone. Identity becomes defined by what you oppose, not what you believe. This creates a feedback type loop. The more extreme the other side appears, the more justified your own extremism feels. So here's an example of that. Voters consistently saying they aren't excited about their candidate, but are terrified of the other one. Every cycle, every election, reason we got to get out to vote, the Antichrist is coming, right? So it's this spiral of negative partnership. People no longer rally for something. They organize against someone. Somebody becomes the embodiment. It's no longer what it is that you're against. It's who you are against, right? So for instance, there are people who, no matter whether this country burns down, if you ask them, man, if you had to do it all over again, would you still vote for Donald Trump? Absolutely, because in their mind, they don't care how bad it gets, as long as Kamala Harris is not the president. As long, they don't even care necessarily how well she would have done. They would rather see white supremacist, white hegemony power politics prevail at the expense of even their own economics than to see, right? So because you've got to be able to demonize somebody. You've got to be able to make somebody the actual avatar for what it is that you are against. Right. There's this one guy, I won't even name him because he's literally that unimportant to me. But because, hey, stop. Because my dog always does something to try to get my attention or to compete with me. And you probably can't hear him, but he's he's doing something over here. Well, this guy, only because it makes my point. He's been trolling me now for easy 10 years or more. I've blocked him literally on every social media account. And he will how he has followers. I'm going to show you why a lot of these people who call themselves Christians, not only are they not Christians, these people need to be checked into they need to be checked into psych wards, right? And so he's got this following. His whole thing is about division, trolling, just sociopathy, the worst kind ever. And this guy will do literal lives about people that he doesn't like. He'll be on for 5, 6, and 7 hours, just spazzing out, literally just spazzing, crashing out. And he has done literally dozens over the years on me, right? People will let me know that it's going on. I don't typically care, but I've seen a few of them here and there, a couple of minutes. And I recall one maybe about a year ago, maybe a year or so ago, where me and a couple other brothers, we did a panel, and he just can't stand the fact that he's just not included in any of these conversations, and that nobody wants to have any conversations with him, right? He's just literally ignored. He's invisible in most conversations, and this just burns him up. And so because he saw me and a few other people on the panel that he dislikes, he goes on literally a 3-4 day spaz out session on me each day, 4 to 5 hours in a row. Now, his audience is supposedly Christian, and he's talking about, I can't stand the black church. And then he's using all kinds of profanity, calling the black church a hoe, literally, and calling the black church a bitch, all kinds of stuff. And then he starts calling me all kinds of names, and even saying he is the dumbest MFer on the face of the terror of the earth, the terraform, and so forth and so on, and blah 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 blah. And there are white Christians and quote unquote, and even black quote unquote Christians in the audience rooting this on, as if this is not just pure mental collapse, but this is being done in the name of Christianity, because they need enemies, they need faces, they need a person in order to demonize, not just ideas. They need a person. They need, like what the witchcraft person needs. They need a voodoo doll to stick pins in, to hurl insults at, to spew verbal curses and incantations against. They need that. I kid you not. If you had seen it, you would be utterly appalled as to how any human, particular, any unbelieving human could stoop so low and be so outraged, so unhinged. But then to think that these are people doing this in the name of Christ, in the name of Christianity, because I disagree with their position, right? And so that makes it, Damon is divisive. Now, never mind that I'm countering division, But to see, there's nothing more protected in this country than white supremacy. And there's nothing more rewarded and privileged than that. So as soon as you start coming against that, the easiest trope to use is you're the divider. You are the divider. Folk are literally asking questions. Why is Damon spazzing out all over YouTube and all over social media, attacking brothers and this, that, and the other? Notice they're not even trying to be honest interlocutors. They're not interested in being good faith agents and players in the conversation. Their only purpose to get in the conversation is to, throw a Molotov cocktail in it, right? Keep the narrative going, right? They don't really care about what you're explaining, no matter how redundant you are, no matter how careful you are to lay out the argument. They're just going to come in, throw the Molotov cocktail, and run. He's a divider. He's the real racist, right? And so all of these kinds of things obviously contribute to toxic polarization, right? But I think while all of those things contribute to it and are characteristic of toxic polarization, I think that before people even get into conversation, before they even get into the dialogue, things have gone wrong there. And those things obviously are factors in it. But I want to go a little bit deeper into what I would call toxic engagement. Toxic engagement. This is essentially bad faith entry, engaging with no intent to listen. There are people who show up to the discussion intent on engaging that way, right? And so oftentimes we'll be thinking, man, that could have been a great conversation. Why did it implode? Or why did it explode? Why did it go so bad? What could have been done differently? What could Damon, for instance, have said differently? Maybe it was his tone, so forth and so on. Right now, I get it. We all can work on the ways in which we engage, and we all need to be mindful of ways in which we might intentionally or even unintentionally contribute to polarization. But I want to say this: if you show up to a conversation with as a bad faith actor, you were wrong before the conversation ever started. You were wrong before the conversation ever started, because you never had any intention on engaging from the standpoint of listening. You ever wrote something and it was as clear as day, and somebody will come right into the comment section and say something just completely opposite of what you have said. For instance, let me just share, for instance, something that I posted a little bit earlier about the rededication of the country and the poster that I had shared several times, and I call it White Jesus at the Center of It All. And so I say, well, meet Jonathan Rumi, the latest iteration of television Jesus, incarnated in the image of a white American, from the series The Chosen. Ironically, Rumi has chosen to lend his pseudo-historical Jesus imagery to the cause of white Christian nationalism. The poster intentionally places him at the center, and unlike Israel Houghton's version, the biblically historical and risen Jesus isn't involved at all. For white Christian nationalism is a cult of Christianity, which preaches a false gospel and has a false Jesus. What's the problem? Rumi's dad is Egyptian Lebanese, and his mother is Irish. I say the problem is with white identity politics. Listen to that. Notice the problem is with white identity politics. Many MENA as an acronym, which stands for Middle Eastern North African people here in the US, identify as white to their advantage and also subscribe to policies that contribute to the disenfranchisement and disempowerment of non-white people out of political convenience, proximity, and racial prejudices of their own. Why does this matter? Well, the image of a blue-eyed, fair-skinned Jesus is entrenched in Western religious iconography and were plastered across churches, homes, and schools in America during and after enslavement. This act was never theologically neutral. It was a deliberate ideological instrument of weaponization. By presenting God the Son as racially white, white supremacy fused spiritual authority with racial hierarchy, coding whiteness as holy and powerful while coding blackness as its opposite. Theologically, this was a distortion. Historically, this was and is revisionist. The historical Jesus was a brown-skinned Jewish man from the part of the Middle East that touches the Asian and the African continent. And the manipulation of his image in the context of European nations participating in the transatlantic slave trade, and most specifically what would become the USA, was not mere artistic interpretation, but an act of conquest. It was a colonization of the sacred engineered to make Black people internalize devotion towards the physical image of their oppressor. The psychological damage of this iconography reaches into the deepest layers of identity formation. When a child grows up seeing a God who looks nothing like them and everything like the people who enslaved and dehumanized their ancestors, a rupture forms at the intersection of faith, dignity, identity, and self-worth. Whiteness becomes quietly associated with divine favor, and Blackness is left to make sense of its own absence from the holy. This is white supremacy operating at its most calculated level, because it does not only seize land, labor, and legal rights, it reaches for the interior life and attempts to make oppression feel ordained. The typical colorblind response is, which is likely to show up numerous times on this post, the one that says Jesus's skin color doesn't matter, or we should focus on the message rather than the image, or even the tired platitude, Jesus died for sin and not for skin. Attempts to present itself as spiritually mature, but in reality functions as protection for the very thing it claims to transcend. That argument never surfaced when white artists across 2 centuries depicted Jesus in every television show, every movie, Sunday school book, magazine, painting, costume, billboard, and stage play in their own likeness. It only appears when Black people name what was done. So colorblindness in this context does not dismantle the problem. It buries it beneath a language of unity that was never applied equally in the first place. This is how theological respectability becomes a tool of suppression. It repositions the critique as divisive while leaving the original harm completely intact, declaring that race no longer matters, specifically after it was used as a weapon across generations. It is not a neutral spiritual position. It is the comfort of those who were never targeted by the weapon speaking over those who were. The wound does not close because acknowledging it has become inconvenient. Colorblindness, dressed in the language of grace, is still erasure. At a time when white supremacy in this country is peaking, when white Christian nationalism is being put on Main Street, when this administration coddles it and protects it, when white evangelical churches smuggle it, practice it, justify it, excuse it, and even turn the deaf ear to it. When this administration is aggressively and strategically at war with Black Americans, white Jesus is once again positioned to not only sanctify and baptize racism and white supremacy, but also to do what whiteness as identity was invented by whites to do. And that is make the notion of true American, true Christian, and God's chosen people synonymous terms with whiteness, and to marginalize Black Americans to the fringes while centering whiteness. What makes this image so egregiously heinous is exactly what made the slave endorsing version of white Jesus heinous. This American Jesus sits at the center so as to approve of gerrymandering Black voting districts to suppress our vote, diluting the voting power of Black communities, and the reduction of Black representation in Congress. He, that is, the white Jesus, sits in approval of the dismantling of DEI, which was intended to target long-standing discrimination practices. He sits in approval of this administration targeting the economic support that was designed and aimed at providing access to capital and closing lending gaps between Blacks and whites due to racial discrimination. This white Jesus centers white priorities of power, wealth, and winning at all costs, while approving of erasure. Lost my place. Hold on. While approving of the erasure of Black history and public memory, white Jesus has given his sanction to the rollback of protections within the Voting Rights Act. White Jesus, white Christian nationalism, and white supremacy, another American cult posing as Christianity, using Jesus's good name to defame the gospel and destroy lives. Now, why did I read all of that? Well, you heard it, and I needed you to hear all of it so that you can understand exactly what I mean by the first point that I made about the way that people enter conversations as bad faith agents. So after having said all of that, here are some folk, right? Here are some folk that will that come to comment. Listen to this. Let me just read a couple of them for you. Here's one guy. He is Middle Eastern and Armenian, though. See? He didn't care about what I actually said, why I said it, what the facts were, why even pointing out that he was of some Middle Eastern descent didn't actually matter to his participation at the event. See what I mean? He's not a good faith actor. That's a bad faith entry, right? I'm not showing up to learn. I'm not showing up to consider the possibility that I could even be wrong. Right? Now, I pointed out about MENA, Middle Eastern and North African, right? And the fact of the matter is that many people still think that white people are essentially 53% of this country. And the fact of the matter is that's not true. The reason that people think that is because what constitutes whiteness in this country is just people identifying as whiteness on the census. And we know for a fact that many people who are part of MENA categorization, that they actually do that. Again, proximity, privilege, to avoid, obviously, some of the pitfalls of being considered non-white, black, even brown, right? And then the fact that many of them have prejudices themselves towards African Americans, right? That they have imbibed a white supremacist type worldview or construct, a lens through which to look at African Americans, right? So again, he shows up, don't even care about what was actually said there, just bad faith entry, right? So how does that conversation go? How does that conversation end well when people come, they show up, they determine to be in the conversation behaving this way? Here's another guy. What a racist post. Griffin Holman. And again, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Wichita, Kansas, just don't even care. Bad faith access. How's that going to be a good conversation? What a racist post. See, anything, again, that disagrees with how they see it, because if it doesn't align with whiteness, then it's not right. The racists have started calling people who call them out racist. They're calling the people who are calling them out as racist, they're calling them the racist. Here's another one. More anti-white hatred. Now, bad faith entry. How do I know? Well, again, if anybody's listening, if anybody's really genuine in terms of their engagement, you would know that there's no hatred towards white. There's hatred towards white supremacy. There's hatred towards racism. Not white people, because all white people are not white supremacists or racist. But let's be clear, the racists are whites. Right? So that shouldn't surprise anybody. And so his way of interpreting things is, more anti-white hatred. The big nose and significant tan on this Jesus is indicative of Middle Eastern origins. We aren't dealing with Middle Ages art anymore. Get over it. It's bad faith argument. It's entry. They don't care about what the truth is. They just, again, that is why toxic polarization is so strong, because of toxic engagement. People show up to conversations determined to keep things polarized, right? They come into the conversation that way. Here's another one, and I'll get off this one. I might have even deleted it. It was so bad. I think I did. It was so bad, I think I even deleted it. But you get my point, right? So, so toxic engagement begins when someone enters a discussion not to understand, not to exchange ideas, but to win, to destabilize, or to perform. The conversation is already dead on arrival. Already dead on arrival. The difference between disagreement and bad faith engagement is intent. And here's one of the things I noticed that people who practice bad faith engagement love to do. When you point out their hypocrisy, their bad faith acting and all of that, they're like, well, you just don't like people disagreeing with you. No, you don't like people disagreeing with you. See, they love to flip the script to project what is actually true about them onto other people. Right? So bad faith actors aren't interested in your best arguments. They're looking for an opening, a slip, or a quote in order to weaponize. Right? It's like what some did a few weeks back with, Damon supports abortion. Nobody who knows me or who has even listened to me believes that. But then they took a video, took parts of my argument saying, here are the exceptions to what would at least justify abortion. While I am against it morally, here are two things I think would justify it. One, the life is no longer viable. I called it a monstrosity. They didn't care that I'm against abortion. In fact, that would align with what they believe. But rather than say, well, he doesn't believe in abortion, they took the exceptions and then wanted that little snippet. We can use that. We can weaponize that, right? And the other one that's justifiable is the doctor says, hey, if you go forward with having the baby, you will die. And mothers are then facing a decision. They've got a choice to make, right? I can terminate the life of the baby and live, or I can give birth and die, in which case this baby will grow up without a mother, right? Now, in most of those cases, there have been cases where mothers have decided to pay the ultimate price, sacrifice their life. You know what? I have nothing but praise for a mom that thinks that it's worth it to do that, right? I can't even be mad at that, right? If her and her husband, the child's dad, have come to that agreement, then if that's what they want to do, I am salute, right? But if the mom says, hey, I got these other children to raise, right? They're here, they need me, salute, right? So those are the two exceptions. So how about, rather than engage with me where it counts, to take those two things and attempt to make me a pro-abortion dude? Is that honest faith engagement? No, absolutely not. That's exactly what I'm saying. And so when those people show up, you are really, in effect, wasting your time engaging with them because they have no intent on honest engagement in the first place, right? They're not looking for your best argument. They're looking for an opportunity, an opening, a slip, or a quote in order to weaponize it against you. Have you seen this before? You guys know what I'm talking about? I'm sure you have, right? I'm sure that I am not alone in this. And then again, another thing, I've talked about this before, but it's gaslighting, right? Gaslighting in public discourse isn't just interpersonal, it's structural. It's used to make the reasonable person feel like they're the one being unreasonable. You're the unreasonable one for pointing out what is plainly happening, right? We've seen Cheyenne Bryant do that recently, right? I mean, the chick got busted, dead to rights. You do not have an earned doctorate degree. It's been proven that you don't. So what did she do? She started gaslighting, and she's gaslighting till this very moment, coming up with the absolute worst excuses. One is, y'all just mad because I'm light-skinned and pretty. Right? Just imagine that. Imagine people pointing out that you have been lying about your educational accomplishments. And you've even been profiting from the very notion that you are not only have a doctorate, a PhD in psychology, but that you were a licensed therapist, right? There's gazillion videos where she's saying, I'm a licensed therapist. And what does gaslighting sound like? I never said that. Y'all just need to, the problem is the way that y'all are hearing. No, the problem is not what we heard. The problem is what you said. We heard you every time you said it. That's gaslighting. They want to make it seem like you are crazy. You are losing your mind, right? You have this wrong. They want you to imagine that the issue is really you. You are being too sensitive, right? And here the person is pointing out something harmful or some harmful pattern. You are the one being too sensitive. Like the one guy, get over it. You're the racist. Reframing your clearly stated position as something you never said, then attacking the reframe. We call that oftentimes straw manning the argument. Like you literally, no matter how clear you say it, they are going to reframe what you clearly said, then attack the reframe. And hold up the trophy as though they won the debate. Here's another example of gaslighting: denying well-documented history mid-discussion and demanding this. You ever hear this before? You prove it. As though you're not already proving it, right? Just to derail the point. They have no other motive but to derail the point. All the onus is on you. They don't ever have to prove anything. You prove it is really them saying, unless I am willing to accept the validity of the evidence that you are showing me, then it's not true. As though they are the arbiter of what's factual or not. See, we talk about toxic polarization, but I'm telling you, the reason the polarization exists is because folk show up to discussions like this, right? And what we've got to do is we have to demand better from people. We have to demand that when you are coming, I know folk think that I'm mean or I'm rude. I'm not rude. I just know when I can smell this, and I have like negative 50 patience for it. I have none. I'm on the negative end of the integer scale when it comes down to patience. Because if you are not going to arrive to the conversation as a good faith actor, do not come to the conversation. I will call it out. And me calling it out or me calling you out is not me being mean. It's you being an idiot, you being arrogant, you thinking that you can insult people's intelligence, gaslight, troll, perform, be a sociopath in real time, and then walk away laughing. No, I don't engage with folk, and that's why I'm so short. I don't engage with folk like that. You got one or two statements to make, and once I see this kind of behavior, I either block you, delete your stuff, get rid of you. I owe you nothing. There are people who are saying, I think I just seen it here. Hold on, just a second ago. I think I just seen it here. When are you and the ones you called out going to have that conversation? I don't need to have any more conversations. That's the thing. I don't need to have conversations, particularly with people who are intent on gaslighting. And once I know folk are going to gaslight, it makes the conversation impossible. And I'm not going to do it. It's not good for my mental health. It doesn't produce any good outcome, or it's not edifying. All it does is it throws an accelerant on the issue. And when I see that the issue can't go anywhere, I'm done with it. Because here's the thing that I know. I'm not the kind of person who can't admit that they're wrong. I've got videos talking about the fact that I'm in an entire book talking about being born and raised in the Nation of Islam. What is wrong with the teaching of the Nation of Islam? What is it even after? Right? And why, even though it appears to address historical harms and real issues perpetuated against Black people, why it is not a good option for Black people, theologically, socially, so forth and so on, right? I'm talking about that. I'm talking about my drift into oneness Pentecostalism. Even explained that, and even went and took some of my old audio from when I was debating as a oneness, and then took that audio and did a debate against myself, crushed my old self in debate. I'm not the type of dude who can't say that I'm wrong. The fact that I am where I am now is because of God's grace, because of the Holy Spirit's, the Spirit of truth work in my heart, guiding me into truth. Right? But when I know people are not good faith players, it's the end of the conversation. Right? Right. And so when you present facts and they're moving the goalposts, denying all of that, what else are we going to talk about? What are we going to do? We're supposed to find some middle ground of some neutrality somewhere where we can, and what I'm not willing to do, and what you should not be willing to do, when it comes down to things that are morally right, ain't no neutrality, ain't no middle ground there, ain't no, well, we just seeing it two different. Listen, it ain't no two different ways, opposing ways to see something that's morally right or morally wrong. This is not a mere matter. And when you allow people to diminish and minimize and the discussion and get it down to mere disagreement, what they're attempting to do is get the upper hand in the conversation by suggesting that we're just disagreeing and you're not disagreeing well. When the reality is that no. The disagreement is the person disagreeing with what's right and what's true. Right? When facts are presented in the face of facts, there are no opinions that matter. You don't get to you're not entitled to your own facts. You are entitled to your own opinions. In the face of facts, there is no, if you are disagreeing with the facts, you are the one disagreeing. It's no longer two people disagreeing. It's you now disagreeing with the facts. Right? And oftentimes what they want you to do is to defend your sanity instead of your argument. Once and this is why I always call that being, it's a tactic, it's a strategy to get you on your heels. So you're constantly saying, I'm not a racist. I'm not a racist. Let me prove that I'm not a racist, because they throw these out. They're never really dealing with your argument. It's your tone. You're arrogant. It's your this, you're that, or whatever. And so you'll spend more time on your toes trying to defend yourself, defend your sanity, rather than the argument. And the reality is, it just relieves them of the burden of actually even dealing with the argument, because they've made you the focus of it. The conversation is over. Which is gaslighting is akin to trolling. Disruption at the entire point, right? Trolling is not failed communication. It is successful disruption. This is what I'm saying. Before the conversation even starts, right? People are looking for how to deal with polarization. And the reality is that it's at the point of engagement. If folk are coming in this way, then polarization is going to remain. These kinds of issues at the level of engagement are hard issues. They are mental issues. They are heart issues. They are sin issues. The troll isn't trying to make a point. They're trying to prevent you from making yours. Recognize it. Engagement only feeds it. Toxic engagement. So they'll even pretend that they're interested, have you doing, prove it, and have you going and finding all kinds of stuff, and they're not a bit more interested in any of it. They just want to waste your time. It's a sociopathy. Like there's a whole lot of people on social media that are actually sick in their heads. Sociopathy is a mental illness. Like literally. And I don't think social media caused it. I think social media has exposed it. Millions of sociopaths running around terrorizing America. And these kind of trolling is a very dangerous kind of way of terror. The online trolling is spilled into in-person discourse. The same mechanics tend to show up in Q&A sessions, public meetings, even family dinners. You've heard it before. Distinguishing a troll from someone who is just wrong involves the person who is wrong will eventually engage with evidence. The troll escalates or shifts the moment that you do present evidence. And then there's the emotional trap, where trolling is designed to provoke a response that makes you look irrational, essentially handing them the narrative. Right. So in other words, they want to push your buttons. They want to get you to essentially crack under pressure. Right. They want to get you to melt down somehow. So they push your buttons. Now they're wrong about all that they're saying, but if they can get you acting irrational, it hands them essentially the victory, and it supports this essentially false narrative that they're wishing to put out against you, that you are you're unhinged or blah 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 blah, this, that, or the other. And now the reason I'm pointing all of this out is because again, if we're going to impact toxic polarization, we've got to do it at the level of engagement. And I'm telling you, one of the ways of dealing with toxic engagement is to disengage. Stop giving these people your time. I had literally said it the other day on what did I say? I think I said it about threads. Said it about threads the other day. I said, let me see if I can find that. I said, listen, I can't take the trolling and gaslighting on threads. I said, I tried and I can't. I said, you have to literally have the don't give a damns of a honey badger to be on there. Like there are people on there. Some of these people are obviously bots. Some of these people are white people will pose as black people. They'll take an issue where they know black people feel a particular way, and a white person will create, literally, I'm telling you what they do. A white troll will take will make a fake profile and then say, oh, black person here, I don't have any problem with what Chud the Builder did. I think it's good. And then next thing you know, again, it's like a Molotov cocktail. Then there's like 10,000 black people who were just enraged that a black person could say that. And all the while, it's some racist white person, probably from New Zealand, that's just laughing the whole time at how they were able to sociopathically cause all of this kind of chaos. And you want to know the problem? They intend to engage that way. How do you combat that? Disengage. When you know that people are bad faith actors, don't even let them get all this off, because all that I was talking about here, that's coming behind all of that. At the point of engagement, they're about to start unloading all of these weapons. And once you are able to recognize that that is what they are doing, get rid of them. You owe them no politeness. You owe them no time. You owe them no explanation. You owe them no education. Since they so smart, tell them to go read up on it themselves. You don't need to prove nothing to them. So smart, but wanting you to do all of the homework. You go read. Well, what's your definition of racism? You go study racism. You go research it. See, what you're trying to do is say, you don't really know. No. What you're trying to do is use psychology to bait me into an engagement with you that's going nowhere. Goodbye. Block. I don't have time for that. Got to keep my blood pressure healthy. Got to keep my mind sane. I don't even know this person. What am I going to let them do? Run my cholesterol and blood pressure level up? I don't even know who they are. I owe them no time. I owe them nothing. What do I care? That they care that I block them, right? I don't even know them. I care nothing about how they feel. I care nothing about the video that they're going to make about me after I do it. You want to know what I do care about? The truth. You want to know what I do care about? My mental health, my emotional health, my sense of shalom. I care about all of that. I care about my community. Goodbye. Right? We have to start fighting back. Toxic polarization is the result of toxic engagement. Get rid of these people. You do not need 7,000 friends. These people ain't all of your friends anyway. You don't even know most of them. Folk who want to just do drive by, they don't really engage. But as soon as you touch, let me say this. Let me say this because I'm telling you now. And listen, all of them are toxic. All social media has this kind of toxicity to it. Right? Now, listen, I'm going to tell you, don't be fooled. Do not be fooled. Here's what I know. Here's how folk act. Right? Now, as long as I am saying something, right, about, let's say I call out a particular person. Okay, let me just be more specific. So more recently, I have called out Philip Anthony Mitchell for his for being a proponent of white Christian nationalism. And the evidence is there. Like, I don't care what you say about him. I don't care what you think about him. Oh, he's an anointed man of God. He's a white Christian nationalist. His view of the Bible, his view of God, his anthropology around Black people, particularly Black Americans, is wrong. His view of the gospel is distorted. We've pointed this out on multiple videos. Now, there are some people who don't like Philip Anthony Mitchell. They just don't like him for whatever their reason is. So when they hear me saying that, they're like, yeah, get him, Damon. They'll even share that statement. And it's only because I have become a voice for how they feel on a personal level. They don't care whether those things are true or not, and they only don't like them, right? So at that point, I become popular to this person. I become somebody, man, you ought to listen to Damon, until I take one of their sacred cows and smash it. Then all of a sudden, man, see, the problem I have with Damon is he thinks nobody can disagree with him. He just thinks he's right about everything. Now suddenly I'm not I'm not share worthy. Now suddenly I'm not somebody to listen to. I'm not a trusted voice, this, that, or the other. That's what I'm telling you. You can't be fooled even by that engagement, that type of engagement. Some folk don't care nothing about what you're talking about. You're only useful because you are essentially dealing with something that is important to them, right or wrong. Now, as soon as you say something that may expose, here's a good case in point. There are folk who they know Jamal Bryant is essentially a heretic. Ain't no gospel truth to be found in this man's heart or on his lips. Now, if I believe in social justice from a biblical standpoint, there are people who believe, obviously, in that because they hold to a biblical worldview, a biblical belief and praxis as it relates to social justice. Voices like Jamal Bryant will essentially promote social justice. And so if you're not careful, you'll take even his voice because that's something that you believe in, and then say, man, you ought to listen to what he said about Charlie Kirk, or listen to what he said about Donald Trump, or listen to what he said. And mind you, you're doing that out of the convenience of the fact that this is an area that he agrees with you on. Then you turn around and you hear him say, well, 85% of Jesus's life, he was in error. Then you want to go make a video about him. Man, he doesn't have his theology right, this, that, or the other. And why were you sharing him? And this is my point, is that this is the hypocrisy in that defines toxic type engagement, right? It's not different when we see somebody like a Robert Jeffries or even a Al Mohler or Franklin Graham, or people who are essentially on a more theologically conservative end, essentially stand right in the same Oval Office or have the same praise for Donald Trump as a Paula White, right? Any other time, she would have been somebody to call out as a false teacher. And even some have. For instance, I was talking about Lauren Livingston just last week in that Trojan Horses 2, and showing how he actually is a proponent of Christian nationalism. This week, he's calling Paula White a heretic. And that's really low-hanging fruit. Just like it was low-hanging fruit when he talked about Donald Trump's use of profanity and how his administration, like, he'll find the lowest hanging fruit, and it sounds like, oh, we've got an ally, somebody standing up for the truth, and they just take the lowest hanging fruit and criticize that, but not the real problem, right? But at other times, there are folk who would normally be on totally different ends of the theological spectrum, now working together because they're on the same MAGA team. Same kind of hypocrisy that some folk practice. Again, like, it ain't nothing that Jamal Bryant ever says that I need to share, because if it's true, I'd rather find people who are faithful to scripture who have said those kinds of things, and then share what they have said, because they can be trusted to also be consistent with their truth telling. How is it that people like Yvette Flunder or William Barber II or Jamal Bryant, how is it that they have a definition for morality when it comes down to racism and social justice, but they don't have a definition for morality when it comes down to homosexuality, LGBTQI kinds of conversations? Suddenly, the Bible can't be trusted. It's antiquated, or you got it wrong. It's really not saying anything against that, you've interpreted it the wrong way. So they've got this floating scale on what morality is. They see morality very clearly over here, but where immorality actually is, it's not immoral over here. It's only immoral over there, but not immoral over here. We've got to be careful. See, those are the kind of things that contribute not only, again, to toxic polarization, but it's these inconsistencies and these hypocrisies. It's why I keep harping on the fact that many of these apologists are hypocrites and they're cowards. Oh, Richardson, I don't like the way he's attacking brothers. No, I'm not attacking anybody. I'm challenging them. I'm challenging them. This ain't about whether they agree with me or not. It's the fact that they are cowards. They are cowards. They are hypocrites. Because you can stand in the hood and talk about, one guy literally got on my post yesterday and had the audacity to say, let me show you this, and I'm done. I got to get out of here, y'all. You got to, if I don't show you this, you wouldn't believe it. So, I said this. It was a thumbnail of a notable street apologist, yet again, racial identity cult, and then it's a thumbnail of some Black Hebrew Israelite dude, and then his picture. And I say, oh yeah, because of course the 12 tribes chart is an existential threat to America. Literally, this is all being facetious, the most dangerous of racial identity cults, and white Christian nationalism is just another biblically orthodox and doctrinally sound Christian denomination. Obviously being facetious, right? Well, most people could get that. Most people understood that. Well, not this one fellow. This one fellow said, let me get it. Let me, you wouldn't believe it unless I unless I showed you. He says, the 12 tribes chart is an existential threat to Black America. Then he goes on talking about some engagement in some major city. And he says, Black people are already aware of the evils of white people and the history of racism, even in the church. Our main apologetic towards unbelieving Black folk is the fact that we have to demonstrate how all these racist white folks who proclaim Christ actually couldn't even have been of the flock, or they didn't really proclaim him anyway and were only nominally Christian. Black people don't need help at all with seeing white people as an enemy. We've already been convinced of that, and it's gone so far. For many of us, it's become our own sort of idolatry. Black people need to be made aware of our own particular sins and pitfalls, on and on and on and on and on. We need to be talking about our false doctrines and this, that, and the other. And so he's skipping over the obvious in order to say it's more comfortable and more expedient for me to point out that Black ideologies and theologies are wrong. And not that we shouldn't do that. I mean, I'm in a whole book. I don't know what this dude been doing with his life for the last 7 years. I'm in 2 books talking about these very things. But I also know that that's not where the conversation starts, and that's not where the conversation is supposed to end. I find it cowardly, hypocritical, and egregiously inexcusable that these same people who could so easily point this out can't even fix their mouths to say that white Christian nationalism is a cult. Can't even fix their mouths to say that it's dangerous. Now, this is not me doing the toxic polarization. The fact of the matter is white Christian nationalism is in fact an existential threat to America. Black Hebrew Israelites hold no power, no position to threaten the position of white people in this country. Aside from yelling at folk on a street corner, they cannot, they do not have the Supreme Court in their pocket. They have no ability to gut civil rights legislation or the Voting Rights Act. They have no, they're not threatening to overturn the 13th Amendment. Those are white Christian folk threatening that. They're not the ones gerrymandering in order to suppress not only the black vote, but in order to get rid of black representation in majority black districts. It ain't the Black Hebrew Israelites doing that. They are not a threat to anybody's quality of life. Anybody. They affect no changes in government. They're not the reason 600, literally more than, 600,000 black women have lost their jobs, federal employment, and even federally contracted jobs because of the cuts that Donald Trump and this administration has made to government agencies and federal contractors, where he knew that it would disproportionately affect black people. And they worried about Black Hebrew Israelites. Let me say it like this: Negro, please. See, I'm not the problem. I'm just pointing out what the problem is. And the problem is folk like people too much that they don't love the truth enough. I honestly don't care whether people like me. I just need you to know what the truth is. And so I risk it all, support, all kinds of things to get folk the truth. Right? I'm not clout. I have no clout to chase. No clout to chase. Whose clout am I chasing? Who? Yeah, there we go. I'm done, y'all. I'm done. Let me pay attention to what y'all are saying here. You guys are talking good here in the comment section. Any questions for me? Anything that you guys want to say here? Let me put up you guys' thoughts. Questions, comments, throw it out there. Y'all been talking the whole while. I just been doing my little thing here. All right. Exactly. Yeah, I did. Actually, absolutely. Did a live on trolling before, and we're seeing the effects of it. We are absolutely seeing the effects of it. Somebody said bots are recognizable. They're just like fake AI posts. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. In some instances. And but again, there's some people who will get on threads and complain about how bad it is and still get on. It's like something and I'm not saying, listen, you can be on if you want. I'm not saying you're toxic by being on, but I'm saying some people love the toxic engagement. Like some people love drama, right? I just don't like it, right? Now, there are people who will say, man, you just post. Every now and again, I still comment. I'll see something that I think is worth commenting on, and I'll comment, or I'll throw a post up, and then I'm out of there, right? Because I'm about information dissemination. But when I see something is on that toxicity kind of thing, I'm out of there, right? Yeah. Any questions? Anybody? Any questions, comments, anything that you want to get out? I'll post it up. Anybody? Good stuff. I'm all the way at the bottom. I'm looking to see if something comes in. I don't see it. So let me say this just before we go. And thanks for coming on. I know, I jumped on a little late, but I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. Let me do that. I'm going to be doing this because I really, really, really need to. And many of you all have responded And I am so, so grateful. I still have a little ways to go. I do. I have a little ways to go. And, but I need the help. If you haven't already done some, anything, please, I would prefer that you can take a picture of this or you can copy this link. It is the Spot Fund. That is the main crowdfunding platform for the fundraiser. You know what I'm doing? Training pastors in Zambia. It's all voluntary. I get no pay for it. I get no salary. It's all a labor of gospel love. I am a missionary. I'm a missionary among other things that I do for the Lord. Add missionary to it. To the glory of God, I am a missionary. What missionaries do is they survive off of funding. They do not go to indigenous contexts or foreign places and make money there. In fact, that is even considered unethical in many places, and many foreign governments won't even allow you to do that. Right? If you're coming to help, then come to help. And so you bring resources with you. You don't get right. So that's what I need, right? And I am still a significant ways away from my goal. My goal is 10,000. That's my goal. And it's a little bit more than it was in November. I think in November it was like I think 7,000. There's about an additional 3,000 more because of some additional resources that are necessary to bring over there. So we got to bring a Starlink for internet because the internet is so bad there. And because of the teaching and the things that we're using it for, we need it. Also, the power grid it goes up and down all day. It's a very unstable power grid. And we'll need a solar powered generator, which could literally give us enough power that could last about 2 or 3 weeks. And where I will be there for 2 weeks. It will give us about enough power for anything that we need to charge up and use without relying on the power grid that is already essentially overburdened with demand for electricity, right? So we've got to bring books there. And so there's some additional expenses. All of this is about how we can benefit and serve, not about how we can be served or how we can self-aggrandize and comfort ourselves or whatever, right? So we are going to serve. I'm at about maybe about $4,000. I will be leaving on June 14th. It's May 18th. So I am already less than 1 month away, like literally 1 month away. Here is what I am asking. Here's my big ask. Obviously, everybody that's watching, if you could give generously as you can. More importantly, if you are a pastor, please, pastors, listen. If there are 10 pastors on here and you went back, inbox me, I'll send you a letter. I can email it to you, however you need it. But if you can convince your board, your team, or whatever it is that you have, hey, listen, let's take on Damon Richardson as a missionary. Most churches have a missions budget. Make me part of that budget, $1,000. If your church can commit to $1,000, I go there twice a year. So I am going to be needing regular partners to do this. I am the academic director for Theo Smith World Leadership Institute, training pastors biblically, theologically, and in leadership to effectively serve in their context. This is very important work. And again, people fundraise all the time to do these kinds of things and other kinds of things for the kingdom of God. This is my community, and I just need your help. So partner with me. I can't say enough about it. I really can't. And so my church is partnered, and I've gotten a number of other people. So we've gotten to where we are now. We're at about $4,000 But I need that. That literally means I need about $6,000 more, and that's not a big like that's literally not a big ask. If like 6 churches sell $1,000, oh, that's nothing, bro. We can do 2,000. Like literally, like if you believe in the vision, if you believe in this kind of ministry, this is a worthy ministry to support, right? So again, I have no tricks, no scams, no blessing kind of spiel or whatever. I am saying, like the Apostle Paul, partner with me. When you partner with me, this is a way of partnering with the mission of God. There we go. All right. Appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. Bloom, G. Bernie, what does it take for conversations to end on a good note? People being genuine, coming into the conversation as a good faith actor, like literally, right? Like coming into the conversation, not representing their tribe, coming into the conversation with a willingness to learn. Now, remember, you can't come into every conversation because some conversations you come into are tribal. So you are not going to get anything out of that conversation other than a Fox talking point. But when a person is making valid arguments, historical arguments, and they're talking right, engage honestly. A good way to engage is don't come in making accusations. Don't come in hurling ad hominems. Come in with genuine questions. Now, the way not to sound like a troll is all this prove this, prove that, show me this. The way not to sound like a troll is I might be misunderstanding you. I could have it completely wrong. Could you unpack this point a little more? Right? I genuinely want to understand. If you got to make a little disclaimer, do it, because that goes a long way. I genuinely want to understand what you are saying, and I don't want to disagree where I might learn something or I might find out that we actually do agree. But help me to understand what you mean here, and just have a willingness to listen, to learn, to hear what the person is saying, right? Typically, even if it ends with in some sort of disagreement, it can still end in very cordial ways, right? It can still end with respect and pleasantries and this, that, and the other, right? A lot of it is how people come into it. It ain't even what happens in the conversation. It's folk coming into the conversation determined to be some, wily coyote, right? Some Yahoo, guns a blazing, right? It's going to go bad if you come into a conversation that way, right? So excellent. Thank you. So listen, I promise you, every 10, 15 minutes, I am checking my email to hear back from my chair. I've texted him sometime last week and didn't hear anything. So I said, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I'm still inside of that window, or this, that, and the other. I am checking like every 15, 20 minutes, my email, refreshing and everything. Hoping to hear the good news about it's on this day. And when I find out the day, I promise you, it's going to be an announcement. So trust me. And I almost can't sleep. I have insomnia even at times. Just I can't stop thinking about it. Like, yeah, I'm so close. And when you're so close, it's a torment. But pray for me. Pray for my rest. Pray for my shalom, my peace of mind, because I definitely want to get this behind me, get it out of the way, so I can celebrate. So, want to know if we can disagree with our brothers and sisters without becoming enemies. Sometimes, if a brother or sister is landing on something that threatens the unity of the faith, then no. right? And this is what I need people to be able to lean into the discomfort of the sometimes, right? Like we can disagree about a lot of things, but there's some things that are non-compromisable. One thing I am not ever going to be cool with is the disenfranchisement of any group of people, especially Black people, a group that I am a part of. The disenfranchisement, the oppression, the disinheritance, and all kinds of mistreatment, white supremacy, racism against African Americans, and how that gets justified, how that gets excused, and all of that by Christians. We ain't ever going to be cool. And I'm going to always tell you to your face that until you can demonstrate biblical orthopathy, biblical orthodoxy as it relates to other image bearers, namely African Americans, I do not have to look at you as a brother or sister. In fact, I see your confession of faith as hypocrisy. Yeah. And I know that makes some people uncomfortable. But here's what I know about that person. They are not willing to call a person who openly practices homosexuality or is in a gay marriage. Those people attend churches and those people call themselves Christian. Ask that person if they're willing to see that person as their brother or sister. Watch now. They don't. And why not? There you go. Right. And so there is the sometimes. And when these issues are morally impacting and devastating to others and violate the word of God, I'm not willing to call you. By this shall we know that you are my disciples, by the love that you have one for another. If you can be a Christian and then you can excuse the mistreatment of foreigners, even if they're illegals, that doesn't mean that you ought to be glad and justify and laugh at their mistreatment, right? Or if you can justify sending Black and brown people back to their countries, finding reasons to actually overturn birthright citizenship in order to create a white majority and to essentially feed this notion of white replacement theory. If you're a Christian and you're making excuses for that, I don't see you as a brother or sister. I don't care how how many boxes you check when it comes down to doctrine. What I see in you is a hypocrite. And that's not a matter of disagreement. That's a matter of you aligning with the kingdom of darkness. We're not having a disagreement. You are having the disagreement with God's word. Don't call me family if you are not willing to stand with humanity and even your Black brothers and sisters in Christ when you see injustices occurring. Don't call me no brother. You want me to call you a brother on top of the fact that you won't even open your mouth and say anything, supposing that somehow neutrality is possible. Listen, ain't no such thing as no neutrality. Your silence is your complicity. I don't care nothing about some gospel you preaching. So no, there are times when it is not possible. Yeah. And I don't see them particularly as my enemies. I see them as enemies of the cross. I want to make that clear. I see them as enemies of the cross, not my enemies. Yeah. Yeah. And we just got to make these things clear so that people understand what we're really saying. Listen, y'all, I have to go. I love you guys so much. You guys have been incredible support for me. You've shown me so much love. and appreciation. And I just really, really thank you all. Thank you again for giving. If you haven't given again, let me just throw this back up. Take a picture of it. There's the spot fund. If you feel more comfortable doing Zelle, admin@urbanlogia.org. And if you use Cash App, I do not have Cash App, so this is my wife's Cash App. So if you don't see my name, it's okay. This is hers, right? So that is another way to give in order to make it convenient for people. But thank you again. I really appreciate you guys. Love y'all. And that's all I got for tonight. But I think that we need to be equipped to the point that we are at least what Peter said. He said, be ready to give an answer. Not get ready, but be ready.